when you start to make your own vegetable broth, you're putting more nutrition in your food. We are looking to eat with nutritional density. So, and when we're making something that requires broth instead of using water or even a store-bought broth, we are filling uh, the water, the broth with molecules of goodness, of organic yumminess, and you just up level your nutrition so much more. I'm going to start with broth because I think it's going to take the longest to cook, and I don't know if by the end of this if we'll have it decanted into jars, but let's pretend that we do. So I usually don't follow a recipe, but I did provide a recipe for those of you who do that, and it's awesome to do that, especially at first. But you just want to rough chop everything. So I'm just going to cut this garlic in half and leave the skin right on it. Super easy. I'm going to use my Instapot for the broth because it sucks all the nutrition out of the vegetables and you get a rich, rich broth. If you don't have an Instapot, you can totally do this in a crock pot or on the stove on low for several hours, and it just takes all the richness out of the vegetables. I already washed my vegetables, so I've got some celery. I'm just going to rough chop that, toss it in the pot. My carrots, I'll do two at a time. Good idea is to have an awesome knife that's sharp. It makes life so much easier when you go plant-based because you do an awful lot of chopping. So just rough cut your veggies. An onion, I'm not even going to skin it. Like I'm just going to cut this in quarters, maybe eighths, just super fast, nothing fancy. Throw it in the pot. I went out and harvested some stuff out of my garden, and I know it's January in Northeast Ohio. I'm blown away at what I'm still harvesting out of my garden. I had a little green onion. I thought that would make my broth pretty nice. I found some chard. The deer are loving the chard, so I have a few pieces here. And I have lots of parsley here. I'm just throwing it in the pot. I had it soaking, and some kale. All right. Let me put this over here. And then I like to put a few peppercorns in mine, so whole peppercorns, because it's just nice. Maybe like 10 or 12. And then some bay leaves. You can add salt to your broth, or you don't have to. Everyone has a preference. Some people shouldn't have a lot of salt. So it just depending on where you're at with the salt thing. I love salt, but I'm going to not put salt in this. I'm going to do it when I prepare my dishes later. So that's it. It's already in water, and I'm going to put it in the Instapot here. Is veggie broth is created out of cooking vegetables and getting all the juice out of the vegetables. And so whatever scraps you have on hand, if you get really good, when you're making something, you might cut the ends of the celery off or the ends of the carrots off. If you save that, you can just use all that in the broth and just make a broth at the end. So whatever you have. So if you don't have to put a ton of vegetables in it, but the more the merrier, I think, to a degree. All right. I forgot to get my Instapot lid out. For those of you who don't have an Instapot and you're considering getting one, do it because it's so awesome. So super easy. I just put the lid on and I'm going to hit broth, right? Where in the heck is it? Here it is. And then in 30 minutes, it's going to be done.
We've got a few questions in the chat.
Okay.
Okay. First question is, are the ingredients organic? And this is referring to the broth.
I like to use organic ingredients. There's no rule that says you need to use organic ingredients, but I I prefer to use organic ingredients, especially the stuff that's put in a broth because it's not the organic carrots and celery and garlic and stuff is really inexpensive.
Sure. Next question is, are there any vegetables that would make this broth or soup not taste good?
It depends on your taste buds. uh, I mean, if you put beets in the broth, you're going to have pink broth, if that
Mhm.
makes sense, right? If you don't like sweet potatoes, I wouldn't really put a starchy vegetable in there in the first place because it'll just make it turn into more of a mushy soup and not a clear broth. But if there's something you don't like you really don't like some people have a um, it's it's genetic. It's in their DNA. They do not like the taste of cilantro. And if that's you or if that's somebody in your family, you might not want to put cilantro in your broth, for example. I hope that answers the question.
Uh, if you don't have an Instant Pot, do you need to boil the water first or just throw it all together and let it go for hours?
Just throw it all together and let it go for hours.
Okay,
You another great way, and probably just about everybody has a crock pot. Just put it in the crock pot and turn it on low and let it roll overnight.
sure. And then if for folks that don't have a broth button on their Instapot, should they use the high or low setting?
Uh, that's a good question, and I don't want to answer it because I'm not sure because I don't have that issue. I'm not familiar with that uh, those settings, so I don't know. Do you have a preference? Katie, is your Instapot like that?
My suggestion of this is if you want to cook something low, to use the crock pot or your stove top for hours and monitor it closely. But if you would like it done fast, in an Instapot is the way to go, and that would be on high.
Okay, thank you. I love that. The broth, you're going to have big chunks of veggies in there. So you're going to want to use a strainer of sorts. Let me see. Oh, what I do with my strainer? Like a colander. I don't know what I did with mine. Oh, here. So you can put this on top of a vessel and and then just pour your broth in there and it'll capture all the big stuff. And then you compost the vegetables, the 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 vegetables that got all their goodness sucked out of them. And then just take your broth. You might want to wait till it cools so the risk of burning goes down. And put them in mason jars. I put broth in half-gallon and quart jars and put them in the fridge. I do probably 5 to 6 quarts a week, and that pretty much gets me through the week with the recipes that I make. I live by myself, but I have a lot of guests coming in and through, and I'm constantly feeding people. So I like to make big pots of food, and so having veggie broth, I can whip up something. Like if somebody pops in, I can whip up something in 20 minutes, and it's delicious. So strain the vegetables, and then take the clear liquid and put it in a jar. Stick it in the fridge. You want it to cool down a little bit before you do.